Good evening, this is Eric J. Thank you for joining me. Tonight we'll be going over two excerpts from another broadcast of The World and Everything in It. A link to that broadcast will be down below. One part of it will be related to the country of Sweden now and how it is dealing with their immigration issues, as well as the Christian church response to all of that within one part of the broadcast. Now the second excerpt is related to how, actually within our own nation, how the border wall situation is actually affecting the different property owners in Texas. And I thought that might be interesting to show to you, so you can go ahead and then listen in and see what you think. Don't forget, make sure you remember to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out whenever I upload a new video. Also, for those fans of Ron Paul, go ahead and look below in the description box for a link to his homeschool curriculum.
Coming up next on The World and Everything in It, refugee converts. Sweden welcomed 160,000 refugees from the Middle East during Europe's migrant crisis in 2015. Sweden's generous social services gave immediate aid to them, and so did that country's evangelical churches that worked hard to feed and house their new neighbors.
Many refugees found faith in Jesus and became active church members. Now, those same refugees and the churches that welcomed them face a new challenge. World Radio's Jenny Lynn Schmidt reports.
Last year, Sweden began deporting refugees back to their countries of origin. The government recognizes that Afghanistan and Iran are dangerous places for Christian converts. So refugees from those countries who have converted to Christianity can claim asylum. But first, they must go before the Migration Board to prove that they are true believers. Christian Mulk is a pastor in northern Sweden who has seen many refugees come to faith in Jesus in his own church.
The Migration Board need to know if they are true Christians or if they are just becoming Christians to get asylum. But the problem is that Sweden as a whole is a secular country, and the Migration Board doesn't really know what makes you a true Christian. So that's why they can ask very strange questions to these Afghans.
Last month, a group of Swedish churches, including Mulk's, released a study of how the Swedish Migration Board interviews applicants and makes decisions. It detailed the cases of more than 600 Afghan converts. The conclusion? The Migration Board uses an arbitrary interview process that relies heavily on intellectual questions, and interpreters often miscommunicate asylum seekers' responses.
If a convert says, I am a Christian and I have been baptized, then the Migration Board can say, well, you've just been baptized. It doesn't mean you're a true Christian, because it's just a baptism. But to another convert, if he says, I am a true Christian and I am now waiting for my baptism, then they say, well, you can't be a true Christian if you're not baptized. So it doesn't really matter what they say, because the Migration Board can just say, whatever, we don't believe you.
Converts are routinely asked to explain the difference between the Pentecostal Church and the Lutheran Church, what exactly is celebrated in the All Saints' Day service, and the theological meaning of specific Bible verses. Pastors say those are questions most Swedish-born citizens could not answer correctly. Pastor Kim Brinta began teaching and ministering to converts at her church in Malmö. She and her husband soon took in 2 refugee boys who had nowhere else to live. The Migration Board asked her to testify on the boys' behalf, but gave little weight to her account.
Normally when I go to court, I say that, we are responsible before God and before, I'm not interested in false converts any more than you are. But at the same time, as if people come with the so-called wrong motive, some of them actually do become Christian and some of them actually do get to know Christ.
Brinta helps lead a grassroots group called Rätt till Tro, or Right to Faith. It's demanding that deportations stop until problems with the migration board are resolved. Christians across denominations are calling for the migration board to listen to pastors and spiritual leaders who know the new converts personally.
They absolutely need to listen to pastors more, because we have prayed together with these Afghans. We have prayed with them, and we have met them, and we know they are true Christians. And we can judge this. We can see this in their life.
Molk says there are instances of refugees who leave the church once they have a residence permit, but he estimates 10% at most walk away. By contrast, the review board rejects 70% of converts.
That means a lot of people are being deported to Afghanistan who are true Christians, and they are being deported to a country where conversion into Christianity is punishable with death.
Swedish politicians have so far ignored the problem. So Rätt till Tro plans to petition the European Union and the United Nations to show Sweden is denying the converts human right to freedom of faith. Despite the difficulties the new converts and their pastors face in court, Brinta sees God using it for good.
We taking in a lot of refugees has actually awakened the church to be church in a new way in Sweden. That's my prayer, to be honest, that through this, the courts of Sweden is hearing the gospel. So I encourage all of those who go, you preach your heart out.
Reporting for World Radio, I'm Jenny Lynn Schmidt.
For those of you who would wish to know more about the role of government and economics from a biblical perspective, go and look below at the link for the Institute for Principal Studies.
Today is Thursday, April 4th. Thank you for turning to World Radio to help start your day. Good morning. I'm Megan Basham.
And I'm Mary Reichert. Coming next on The World and Everything in It, the Olasky interview. George Friedman is a geopolitical forecaster. He founded a private intelligence firm called Stratfor and now runs Geopolitical Futures. World Editor-in-Chief Marvin Olasky sat down with Friedman recently to talk about terrorism in modern times. Here's an excerpt.
Since 2001, we've made fighting terrorism our top national security threat. Is that changing now?
I doubt very much that it's changing. However, we've discovered that fighting terrorism is not as easy as it appears. It's really not a military problem. Terrorists, they can be defeated like ISIS has been. The danger of terrorism is a small group of people. This is an intelligence problem, a police problem. It's not something solved by the military. So going to Afghanistan disrupted al-Qaeda but didn't solve the problem. Going into Iraq or Libya didn't solve the problem. What we're learning as a country is that there can be problems of violence that are not soluble by the military. So I think it remains a high priority, but it's shifting away from the military.
They're not soluble by military. Are they soluble at all?
In the end, if someone wants to come and randomly shoot some people, he will be able to do so. But we are looking at al-Qaeda's attack at 9/11, which was what I call strategic terrorism. It was a massive attack, not on just two important buildings in New York, but also on Washington, on the Pentagon. This is a highly orchestrated operation. But I doubt that more than 15, 20 people in the world knew that it was taking place. We had a massive military response to it, trying to disrupt the organization. And what we found is that we were able to disrupt the command structure of al-Qaeda, but then ISIS emerged. And ISIS is very successful, particularly in Europe, carrying out random terror attacks, sometimes by one guy in a car mowing down a bunch of people. So it's very hard to protect ourselves from terrorism in general. Islamic terrorism is not unique in the kind of terror we have. Timothy McVeigh, we know, attacked the federal building in Oklahoma City. So it is something we've lived with for a long time. I remember when the Croatian nationalists were blowing up buildings in New York City, and we're going to live with that. The cold-blooded fact is it's not a strategic threat to the United States or any country. It is murderous, it is dangerous, it's of course tragic for those who are there, but it doesn't undermine the country unless we allow it to.
So what are the chief threats now? Or if we know what the chief threats are they not chief threats?
Well, the chief threat is the one we don't know of. The chief threat is 10 or 15 terrorists, Islamic or otherwise, determined to deliver a message to some country, to their own people, or what have you. And the danger is those people who are very careful to hide their intentions. And unfortunately, it's very easy to hide your intentions. And so the great threat to us is the unknown.
So why haven't we had another 9/11? It's 17 going on 18 years since then.
9/11 was a very sophisticated operation. The people who carried out 9/11 knew how to evade surveillance by the FBI and the CIA while they gained training in learning how to fly, while they lived in the United States for over a year, while they received money. These people understood U.S. intelligence operations and were able to evade them. They all died. It was an asset, what we'll call it, a wasting asset, in the sense that having died in the operation, the number of people who would still carry out those operations were few. But it turned out that the less sophisticated cells, or people who were just individuals and dedicated to ISIS or whatever, were the most dangerous. We were in London a couple of years ago, and we were 50 minutes away from Parliament when a lone individual driving a car drove into a crowd of people on the bridge to the Parliament, killing a number, and so on. That threat is almost insoluble because it is a person who's come to believe something, and he's prepared to give his life for it, and he's prepared to carry out the action. You can build barriers around the buildings, he'll strike somewhere else. So the problem that you have here is that there is a form of terrorism that's indistinguishable from a psychotic killer. You can't stop a psychotic killer. You don't know he's psychotic, you don't know he's a killer. You can't stop a lone wolf.
So anything we can do? Do we just live with it? Are we underestimating the significance of religious or ideological belief?
Well, there are many motives. I mean, again, Timothy McVeigh was one of the largest killers. His motives were political. There have been other killers who kill children for whatever reason they want, Sandy Hook. So in Europe, in the United States, in many places, we have people who have motivations to kill that don't fit into the Islamic mode, don't fit into the political mode, don't fit into the religious mode. Why in the world does a 16-year-old decide to kill children in a school? There is such a thing as madness. And in a country the size of the United States, there are many maniacs.
The stuff going on at our southern border is often being portrayed as, well, we must increase our border security or else we'll have terrorism and so forth. Is that a political argument or is that a rational examination?
We may have a criminal problem. These people coming across the border have never posed a terror problem. You know, we live in Texas. And in Texas, it's interesting that you don't find huge upset about the border, don't want the border closed, because we've lived with Mexico since the revolution. Interestingly, the country that Texas and California, the two largest states, export the most to is Mexico. The idea that we'll close the border, well, we would expect the Californians to be shocked and upset. What very few people understand is that the Texans are enraged.
That's geopolitical forecaster George Friedman speaking with World's Marvin Olasky.
Below is a link to the Tom Woods Liberty Classroom, where you can learn more about free market economics, which is espoused by such amazing scholars as Milton Friedman and Murray Rothbard. Thank you for joining me. Make sure you remember to like the video, subscribe, and comment.